Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Order of Scribes Wizard from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Now, this is one that when I first looked through it I thought was actually really good, but to my surprise a lot of people online actually thought that it kind of sucked. So I'm not saying that there's no reason to maybe be suspicious of some of these abilities. They do have a lot of ribbon abilities, as they're often called, but I think that they have a lot of really solid abilities too that I wanted to look at, and I think that some people are maybe overlooking some of the potential here. So of course level 2, since you're a wizard you choose a subclass, and obviously you're taking Order of Scribes or else this video wouldn't really apply to you. So at level 2 you're going to get Wizardly Quill, and this one I think is what causes a lot of people to really kind of underestimate the class, that and the level 14 ability. So as a bonus action, you can magically create a tiny quill in your free hand. The magic quill has the following properties. It doesn't require ink. When you write with it, it produces ink in any color of your choice on any writing surface. You can also erase anything you write with the quill if you wave the feather over the text as a bonus action, provided the text is within 5 feet of you. And if the quill disappears, you can create another one if you die. That in of itself is nothing particularly special. I could see some roleplay potential here and there, or maybe you're in a situation where you need to leave a message for your friends and then erase it so nobody can read it. But honestly, there's other ways to do the same kind of thing. But you also have another ability, the one in the middle that I skipped over strategically. The time you spend to copy a spell into your spellbook equals 2 minutes per spell level if you use the quill for the transcription. Well, number one, you can just manifest the quill anytime you want as a bonus action, so there's no reason not to use it. Now, scribing the spell in 2 minutes per spell level may not sound like a big deal, but if we look at the player's handbook, every single subclass from the player's handbook for wizard got some sort of savant ability, right? So you got like evocation savant or abjuration savant, conjuration savant, whatever it was. And that ability allowed you to cut the scribing cost and time in half, bring it down to only an hour per spell level. This is way better. This is just much better, and it works on any spell school. So I understand there are a lot of campaigns where you just don't have to worry about this kind of stuff. The DM just doesn't really care if it takes you forever to scribe spells or the cost or anything else. It might say, yeah, just subtract the gold amount from your spell book, but you can, or from your book, but you can just have whatever you needed there, right? And that's fine. But I have been in campaigns where it's come up where a player wants to scribe a bunch of spells under their spell book, and then we start looking at the time cost and realizing that he's going to be here for a month, and that's just not going to be able to happen. You don't have to worry about that with this. So is this a great ability? No, but it's clearly better than any of the savant abilities. I almost said evocation savant, but it's better than any of the savant abilities that the regular classes got in the player's handbook for wizard, right? It's better than any of them because it's any school and is faster than all of them. So not a bad ability really overall compared to those, right? But you also get another ability, and this is one we're really looking for, the Awakened Spellbook. Using specially prepared inks and ancient incantations passed down by your wizardly order, you have awakened an arcane sentience within your spellbook. When you are holding the book, it grants you the following benefits. You can use the book as a spellcasting focus for your wizard spells. This is pretty nice, although I will point out that if you multi-class, it will not apply as an arcane focus for those other spell schools, right? So let's say you took Artificer, for example, right? You cannot use this as a focus for your Artificer spells, only the wizard ones. But for the most part, solid ability. Number 2, when you cast a wizard spell with a spell slot, you can temporarily replace its damage type with a type that appears in another spell in your spell book, which magically alters the spell's formula for this casting only. The latter spell must be of the same level as the spell slot you expand. So, prime example here. Let's say you want to fireball a bunch of stuff, but you're worried they might be resistant or even immune to fire. You could, if you have lightning bolt in your spellbook, change the damage to lightning. So now you just cast a ball lightning or a lightning ball or whatever else you want to call it. I like this ability a lot. It's not as good as the sorcerer transmute spell because this one requires that you have to have multiple spell damage types of each level that you want to like potentially change, right? And that is just not as good, right? But it's definitely not a bad ability. I do think that it can lead to taking an overabundance of damage spells and neglecting spells like haste or slow or, counterspell, fly, whatever else you might have wanted at those levels instead. But, as long as you're aware of the fact that, you probably only need a couple spells to be able to change here and there at specific levels, then I don't think it's a bad ability at all. I mean, one of the problems we often have on Wizard is that a lot of our good damaging spells tend to be things like fire, like fireball, wall of fire, incendiary cloud, whatever it happens to be, right? And, having those all be rendered useless by things like immunities and resistances kind of sucks. So being able to get around that is actually really nice. Anyways, we also have a third ability from this. When you cast a wizard spell as a ritual, you can use the spell's normal casting time rather than adding 10 minutes to it. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. I don't think this ability is phenomenal, but I have had situations where we're in a rush and you go to cast a spell because you know you have it in your spell book, and then you realize, oh, it was a ritual spell and I didn't have it prepared. Because why would I prepare my ritual spells as a wizard? I can just cast them out of a spell book, never using a spell slot, never needing them prepared. It just adds 10 minutes. But now I'm on the clock, I don't have 10 minutes, and suddenly now, even though I have the spell, I can't use it. So this isn't a super common thing, but I have had it happen, and I've seen it happen to other people as well. So, being able to once per day just say, hey, we can eliminate that extra 10 minutes of casting time and just cast it as a ritual, but without the penalties. That's not bad. I don't think it's a game changer, but I think it's not bad. So then we finally, here we have, if you need to replace the book over the course of a short rest, blah, blah, there's all the rules for, basically you can just use your wizard school or your wizard quill and transcribe it. Anyways, level 6, Manifest Mind. And in my opinion, this is the best ability of the Order of Scribes Wizard. You can conjure forth the mind of your awakened spellbook. As a bonus action, while the book is on your person, you can cause the mind to manifest as a tiny spectral object hovering in an unoccupied space of your choice within 60 feet of you. The spectral mind is intangible and doesn't occupy space, and it sheds dim light in a 10-foot radius. It looks like a ghostly tome, a cascade of text, or a scholar from the past, your choice. I personally like the scrolling text, kind of Matrix style, but whatever. While manifested, the spectral mind can hear and see and has dark vision with a range of 60 feet. The mind can telepathically share with you what it sees and hears with no action required. So already we realize we can use the spectral mind to scout for us. And unlike a familiar, which is only going to have a couple hit points, this thing is actually much harder to kill. It's incorporeal, it does shed light. So it's not like it's really hard to notice because, it glows in the dark. But, still pretty useful as a scouting tool. Whenever you cast a wizard spell on your turn, you can cast it as though you were in the spectral mind's space instead of your own, using its senses. You can do so a number of times per day, equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses whenever you finish a long rest. So, this is really the ability I like the most. If you compare this to, say, a familiar, which can only cast touch spells for us, this is much, much, much stronger. It has a lot of the functionality of an arcane eye, except we can also cast spells through this as well. So you could potentially send your spectral tome or whatever other one you chose from your spectral mind thing, your awakened mind, send that awakened mind down a hall or a tunnel or whatever else, float it around the corner, and be like, oh, there's a whole bunch of orcs there. Hey, don't worry about it. I'm just going to cast Fireball through my eye and blow them all up. That's pretty great. Anyways, as a bonus action, you can cause the spectral mind to hover up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you or it can see. And it can pass through creatures, but not objects. So no floating it through walls or floors in a dungeon or whatever else, right? But still pretty handy. I like the fact that it can just, float and hover and stuff. And You don't even be able to see the space yourself. As long as it can see it, it could float up to it. The spectral mind stops manifesting if it is ever more than 300 feet away from you, if someone casts a spell magic on it, if the awakened spellbook is destroyed, if you die, or if you dismiss the spectral mind as a bonus action. Notice that being incapacitated or rendered unconscious do not cause it to disappear though. So you could take a long rest, sleep for the night, and in the morning that awakened mind is still there and could be there in a month or a year or 12 years or whatever. So again, I like that. But even if it is destroyed, once you conjure the mind, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend a spell slot of any level to conjure it again. So even if you lose it, it's not like it's that big of a deal. You can always just give up a spell slot to bring it back again. I really like the ability to be able to cast spells through it. I think it just combines all the scouting tools of a familiar or arcane eye, but just way stronger and way more flexible and way harder to kill than a familiar is. Anyways, level 10, Master Scrivener. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can create one magic scroll by touching your wizardly quill to a blank piece of paper or parchment and causing one spell from your awakened spellbook to be copied onto that scroll. The spellbook must be within 5 feet of you when you make the scroll. The chosen spell must be of first or second level and have a casting time of 1 action. Once on the scroll, the spell's power is enhanced, counting as 1 level higher than normal. You can cast a spell from the scroll by reading it as an action. The scroll is unintelligible to anyone else, and the scroll vanishes from the scroll when you cast it or when you finish your next long rest. So it's unfortunate you can't give it to someone else. You also can't stockpile them because they disappear with a long rest, right? You're also adept at crafting spell scrolls, which are described in the treasure chapter of the Dungeon Master's Guide, blah, blah, blah. I think there's also rules for it in Xanathar's, which contradict the Dungeon Master's Guide ones. So whatever, figure it out however your Dungeon Master wants to do it and comply. Overall, though, I think this ability is decent. I don't think it's phenomenal, but essentially, let's say you decide to go with the second level spell. Like, let's take Hold Person as an example, right? So I just decide that I'm going to scribe Hold Person onto this scroll. It's now automatically going to be treated as if I'd cast it with a third level spell slot, giving me 2 targets instead of 1. And I can do that without using a spell slot when I use the scroll. So essentially, I've gotten an extra third level spell slot, but it has to be used for first or second level spells. And if I use a first, then it's an extra second level, not a third, right? But, 1 spell slot level higher than the spell I wanted to use for free as an upcast. The downside is you kind of have to have an idea of what spell you want to be casting in the future. It has to use an action to cast, so no absorb elements, for example. Counterspell wouldn't have counted anyways because it's not a first or second level spell. So keep all that in mind. But let's say you want to use a Scorching Ray or something. That's giving you a third level Scorching Ray once per day without using a spell slot. That's not terrible. Like I said, a Hold Person once per day is a third level spell slot. Not using a spell slot though. Again, not a bad ability by any means. I don't think it's a game changer either, but it's certainly a solid ability. So anyways, finally we have our level 14 ability, One with the Word. And I think this is one of the ones that's, along with that, level 2 ability, has kind of caused this subclass to get a questionable reputation. Your connection to your awakened spellbook has become so profound that your soul has become entwined with it. While the book is on your person, you have advantage on all intelligence arcana checks, and the spellbook helps you to remember magical lore. Okay. Moreover, if you take damage while your spellbook mind is manifest, you can prevent all that damage to you by using your reaction to dismiss the spectral mind, using its magic to save yourself. Then roll 3d6. The spellbook temporarily loses spells of your choice that have a combined spell level equal to that roll or higher. For example, if the roll's total is 9, spells vanish from the book that have a combined level of at least level 9, which could mean 1 9th level spell, 3 3rd level spells, or some other combination. If there aren't enough spells in the book to cover this cost, you drop to 0 hit points. Until you finish 1d6 long rests, You are incapable of casting the lost spells, even if you find them on a scroll or in another spellbook. After you finish the required number of rests, the spells reappear in the spellbook, and once you use this reaction, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So let's talk about that a bit. Number one, it is using your reaction. It's not something that happens automatically, whether, even if you don't want it to, right? So you could just choose not to use that ability. If you're that worried about it, that is an option. Personally, though, I think that's possibly a mistake. And the reason I say this is because I actually think this is a very, very powerful defensive ability. Is it one I would use a lot? No, definitely not. But there are times, let's say, at this point you're 14th level, you're fighting some pretty powerful stuff, at least 14th level, right? Let's say you get hit with acid from an ancient black dragon or whatever else, and you're worried that, even with absorb elements, I probably can't make this saving throw, and I'm going to be taking a ton of damage. You could choose to just take no damage at all and sacrifice your awakened mind. And yes, you're going to lose a bunch of spells temporarily from your spellbook. But the thing is, you're not like a warlock or a sorcerer or somebody where you have a very, very small pool of spells to draw from. You're a wizard. Especially as an Order of Scribes Wizard, you can be just scribing every scroll you ever find, every wizard scroll, every spellbook, just taking spells from them, scribing them into your spellbook. If you've ever thought, Witch Bolt sucks, why would I cast Witch Bolt? Or if you've ever thought, Melf's Acid Arrow, maybe I'll use it to transfer damage or to, transmute the damage from a different type to acid, just in case. But now you're like, hey, I could just sacrifice that spell for a while. You get to choose, right? You don't have to give up Force Cage. You don't have to give up Counter Spell. You don't have to give up Wall of Force or Fireball or anything else that you might have wanted to cast. You can choose a bunch of spells that you're almost never going to use and get rid of them. Legend Lore is a cool spell. Very handy for finding out information. Contact of the Plane, same. But are you casting those every day? Probably not, So just give them up temporarily and save yourself a ton of damage. I find that this ability has massive potential, and it does have a giant downside as well, right? So I kind of like that trade, the cost-benefit analysis there. I like that aspect of this ability. So maybe I'm just a little biased towards it, where I think that it's actually a pretty cool ability that does something that nothing else really does, right? But if I'm just getting hit for some damage and I can prevent it with shield, I can use my reaction to do that instead. If it's, absorb elements type of damage, I can use that potentially. But if I'm just going to take a truckload of damage and there's really nothing I can do about it, even making a saving throw for half damage means that I'm going to be in huge, huge trouble. Something like this is a great emergency plan. And like I said, hopefully you don't need to use it very often. But if you do, it's not as bad as it might originally appear. There's nothing stopping you from having just a ton of spells in your spellbook and just saying okay, I need to give up 9 or 12 or, potentially 18 levels of spells. That kind of sucks. But, I could have Gate in my spellbook. Give that sucker up. I had Wish. We're going to keep Wish. But we're just going to take out Gate. Gate can go. Oh, I have Imprisonment. That one can go too, I think. There's some questionable spells, even at high level, that you could have in your spellbook and just kind of sacrifice for this kind of plan, So overall, I actually don't think it's bad. And then when we look at our level 2 abilities, where our version of the Savant ability is way stronger than any of the ones in the player's handbook. Yeah, the other ability is mostly ribbon, but that's okay. Our level 6 ability, allowing us to scout, but also cast spells through our scout, and it gives us dark vision in case we didn't already have it. Pretty nice, right? Especially if you went human and just took the alert feat right off the bat, as I'm sometimes prone to do. And now I don't have dark vision. Oh well, guess what? My awakened mind does though. And it can cast spells for me. I can cast that, well, not for me, but I can cast my spells through it, using its position instead. This really opens up a lot of cool strategic plans that you couldn't normally do as a wizard, right? Like I said, your familiar can deliver touch spells. That's not bad. But your familiar could also die really quick. And this is a lot harder to destroy. and can deliver any type of spell. Overall, I actually think it's pretty good. I actually think it's really good, not pretty good. So I think the level 6 ability is phenomenal. I think the level 2 ability is pretty good. I think that the level 10 ability is pretty good, right? And I think the level 14 ability is one that you'll probably very rarely use, but if you ever need it, you're going to be glad you had it. And overall, I think that makes a very strong package. Is it as strong as the Chronomancy Wizard? No. Is it as strong as the Diviner? Probably not. But I definitely think it's in the upper half of Wizard subclasses, for sure. Probably even the upper third. So I do understand why a lot of people think that maybe it's not so good. They look at this ability, level 14 one, and they think, why would I want to give up a bunch of my spells? I'm a wizard. All I have are my spells. You know, that's a fair point. You look at the level 2 ability and you think, oh, I can erase stuff that I write with my magic pen, and I can write in any color. Who cares? Yeah, fair criticism. That's not an ability you're going to use very often. But most of the others are pretty good, especially the level 6 ability. But even like the levels, even the level 10 one where you can, just make a scroll, first or second level, use it once a day without using spell slot. Yeah, it requires you to have an idea of like, what spell am I going to use today, But some spells are just good general purpose spells. That's why I mentioned Scorching Ray, right? You can probably find at least one fight where hitting somebody with a Scorching Ray with, 4 rays instead of 3 might be a pretty good thing to do with your action, especially if it's not costing you a spell slot. You can probably do that. Hold Person, like I said, another good general spell. You can even take defensive spells like Mirror Image. Like, yeah, okay, they don't really upscale very well or at all. But, it's a spell that you're like, you know what? I could see myself using this once per day. And I'll just scribe it today, just in case I need it. But yeah, overall, I think that the Order of Scribes Wizard is actually very, very strong. I think that they've got pretty good stuff from all the class abilities. And of course, you're a wizard on top of that. So, there's not a lot to complain about there. Overall, though, I think it's very good. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the Order of Scribes. I'm hopefully going to be doing an interview with another YouTuber. I will not say who it is yet. I don't want to spoil the surprise. But that's supposed to happen on Friday. So by the time I edit the video and render it and everything else, it'll probably go up Saturday morning is the game plan. But yeah, it'll be my first interview with another fellow YouTuber. So hopefully everything goes right. I spent a bunch of time testing my settings. But you just never know until the actual event occurs, right? There's always room for technical difficulties, and I'm basically a boomer. I am not particularly good at this kind of stuff, so when it goes bad, it goes really bad. just say it. Anyways, hopefully that goes off without a hitch, and that'll be up for, Saturday, like I said. And yeah, then I'm going to do a couple more Wizard videos, and hopefully we'll kind of wrap up Wizards here. So anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, like I always say, leave me your comments in the comment section. I look forward to reading them, and I promise I read every single comment I get. So that's everything, and thank you for watching.